Hey, welcome to the course. I'm excited to guide you through your journey to becoming a Python developer. In this video, I want to discuss with you your learning path, your Python learning path to make sure you succeed. So we have prepared a PDF infographic which you can download from the lecture resources, and I'm going to go through this PDF to discuss all the learning path options with you to make sure that you are following the correct learning path. But before we discuss your learning path, allow me to provide you with an overview of the course structure. So the course covers Python comprehensively, starting from the very basics up to advanced Python concepts, and we always use real-world examples to explain every feature of the language. That makes sure that you not only learn the syntax of Python, but also the logic behind programming. So we will start with the Python basics, which are beginner-friendly, so if you are an absolute beginner, this course is also for you. You will build applications throughout the course, so every concept is explained in the context of a real-world application. So we'll start with app 1, which is a to-do list app, and this is the exact to-do list application that we will build together, and that's part of Python basics. That to-do list app spans across 20 days, so 20 different sections. And then we will build application 2, which is a portfolio website where you can showcase your Python projects. You will continue practicing Python by building app 3 and app 4, which are part of the Python intermediate category. So by app 4, you will have solid Python skills, and then you can specialize in more advanced concepts such as using APIs and building APIs, data analysis and visualization, web scraping. So we're still in app 10. You will learn object-oriented programming, also known as OOP. Then you'll dive into SQL databases and graphical user interfaces. You will learn web development with Python using Flask and Django, building some fully featured websites with forms and admin interfaces, data science and machine learning as well, building a movie recommendation system, and also creating Python packages so that you can publish your code as a package and others can install and use your packages. So that was an overview of the course. Now let's discuss your learning paths. So you might be someone who wants to become a web developer, or you may want to build desktop GUIs, or you may want to use Python for data science and machine learning. Perhaps you want to be a freelancer doing web scraping or build APIs with Python. Perhaps you want to do text processing and use regular expressions and natural language processing, or just automate stuff. So these are different learning paths, but there is also a main path, which is what I recommend, and that's a general Python developer path, which means you want to take all the videos from the very first video to the very last one. As you can see, we have placed dots at the applications you want to stop if you want to take either of these learning paths. So the Python developer path stops at every single application, because each application will not only give you advanced specific skills about certain areas of Python, but will also solidify your core Python skills. So every application is an opportunity to practice and perfectionize your Python skills. However, if you are interested only in certain areas of Python, like becoming a web developer, you want to stop only at these apps. So you always want to stop at the first app, because that covers the Python basics. So every single path that you take, you want to do that first app. And then stop only at those apps, so watch only those videos where you see the dots. That's my recommendation, because those videos cover that specific area of Python. And once you have completed one of these paths, you'll be able to build your own applications in the future independently. Remember, practice makes perfect. That's why we have all these apps here in the course. So we build them together. If you get stuck, you can use the Q&A in the course. There are thousands and thousands of questions and answers by other students, and you can also ask your own questions there. So thanks a lot for following this. Let's start learning Python in the next video. See you there. Hi, welcome to day 1 of the course where we will start building our first real-world application with Python, a to-do list app, which has 3 versions, but I'll explain that in a minute. What you should know is that in each day we will add a piece to this app until we complete it by day 20. So by day 20 we will have built this app together, which has 3 versions: a web app version, this one in here, which can be accessed through a URL, a desktop GUI version which can be installed on a computer and be accessed locally, and also a command line interface version. Now this is one app, so that's the beauty of programming. You can build the backbone of the app once and then you add something to make it a web app and something else to make it a desktop app. And the same goes for a command line based interface. Now we will start to build the command line interface first, this one here. And once we build that version, you can easily add some more code to build the web app and then the desktop app. Now, since you are an absolute beginner, we will start from the very basics. So as I explain you a concept, for example, list, I show you how to use a list, and then we use a list to build our application. So as I introduce you to new concepts, we add those concepts to build the application. So you not only understand how to write a particular concept, but you also know how that concept is used in a real-world scenario. So let me show you how this command line version of the app works so that you know what to expect in the next 16 days, and then in days 17, 18, 19 and 20 we'll build the web app version and the desktop version. So this is how the command line version works. If you don't know what a command line is, don't worry, you will understand it as we use it in the course. I'll show you that to you. But the user interacts with the program through the command line. For example, they get a message from the program when they execute the program. So type add, show, edit, complete. So the user interacts with the program through text. For example, show, they type in one of the commands. If they press enter, they will see a list of existing to-dos which they have added earlier. So these are stored in a text file. The program manages that, will build all that together. And then if the user wants to add a new to-do, they type in add and type in a to-do, for example, paint the room. And then if they type in show again and press enter, they'll see that new to-do added to the list of existing to-dos. And then they can also complete a to-do, for example, complete number 4. And then when they show the to-dos, number 4 is not in the list. So do the homework is removed from the list. So we're gonna build this program over the next videos, but in the video after this, I'll show you how to install PyCharm and Python. PyCharm is this program that you see on my screen. So in PyCharm is where you'll write Python code, even though you can use any other program. But more about that in the next video. I'll talk to you there. Hi, in this video I'll show you how to install a Python IDE and a Python interpreter. Let's start with the Python IDE first. IDE stands for Integrated Development Environment. It's basically a text editor where you write Python code. And a Python interpreter is the tool which interprets and executes the Python code you write in the IDE, in the text editor. So let's download and install these two tools. For an IDE, I'll use PyCharm. There's other options also, like Visual Studio Code. It's also a great one. Feel free to use your favorite IDE if you have one already. Otherwise, I would suggest to use PyCharm. So to install PyCharm, you need to download it first from this website. So search for PyCharm on Google, go to the first search results. Then you want to go to the download section. So here we are in the download section. And now you may be tempted to download PyCharm Professional. So there are 2 versions, PyCharm Professional. But if you go down here, you find a PyCharm Community Edition also. This is the one we need. What's the difference between the 2 editions? Well, the Professional edition is paid, but you don't need that. The professional version is like the community version, but it does have some sophisticated features which actually for a beginner, for a learner, can be a problem because it will hide some parts of programming, so it makes some things faster. But that's a bad thing if you're learning because some things are hidden from you. So with PyCharm Professional Edition, some things may look like a black box. So please download the PyCharm community version, it's free. So that will detect your operating system. If you are on Windows, you probably need the first option, .exe Windows. This is in some cases what you need, the other one. PyCharm is available in all major operating systems, Mac, Windows and Linux. Once you download PyCharm, you also need to download a Python interpreter if you don't have one. If you have a Python interpreter and if it's at least Python 3.10 or newer, then you don't need to download and install a new one. So keep that Python, it's fine. It's also fine to have multiple versions installed. So if you have 3.10, you can still install 3.12. That's all fine. So if you want to install Python, go to python.org and then to the download section and just download the latest version through this button, Python 3.12 in my case. So once you have the two files downloaded, then I'll start to go through the installation process on Windows. If you are on Mac, you can skip and go to minute 4:45. And if you are on Linux, go to minute 6:17. Here is the process for installing PyCharm and Python on Windows. I'll start with Python. So I'll click on that executable. This is important. You want to add python.exe to path and then go to install now. So Python 3.12 is a newer version from 3.11 and also newer than 3.10. So the versions have been like 3.5, 3.6, 3.7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So now it's 12. The installation was successful, so I can close that and then go to install PyCharm. Click that. Click on next. I'll just leave the default destination folder. I would suggest to click all these options here on the left and just leave that as it is and click on next. Either way, it's fine, even if you don't click those. My installation was successful, so I can press on finish. And that's how you install PyCharm and Python on Windows. In the next video, I'll show you how to start PyCharm and create your first Python program in PyCharm. Hi, now I'll take you through the installation process of Python and PyCharm on Mac. Let's start with Python. You just need to double-click that file you downloaded for Python, press on continue, continue, continue. The process is straightforward, and install. If you already have a Python interpreter installed, that's okay. So my installation was successful and it popped up this window, which is where my Python was installed. So it's in this directory here, and it's a good idea to double click this second file, install certificates.command, and that will show up the terminal. So it will install some certificates which you may need for certain programs which you will build with Python. So you can close that window, you can close this window as well, move the Python installer to trash, and Python is now installed. Let's move on to installing PyCharm. So double click on the PyCharm file. You want to drag PyCharm to applications. So there we go, PyCharm is now in my applications directory, and that was how to install PyCharm and Python on Mac. Now in the next video I'll show you how to start PyCharm and create your first Python program in PyCharm. And here is how to install Python and PyCharm on Linux computers. Now I'll show you the way to install Python and PyCharm through the terminal. And there's also another way to install Python and PyCharm, and that is by installing the files you download from python.org and jetbrains.com. But in this video we will cover the first way, and that is through the terminal. So let's install Python first. You should first do add-apt-repository, so add -apt-repository space ppa : dead snakes /ppa. And if you get this error, you should do that command again and use sudo in front. So enter the password for your Linux account. This is asking you to press enter if you want to continue, so press enter. Then you want to do sudo apt get update to update the repository. Press on enter for that command as well. And finally you want to do apt install Python 3.10 in my case. So if the current version of Python is 3.11, perhaps it's a good idea to use Python 3.10. If the current version is 3.12, use 3.11 here, and so on. So 3.10 in my case. And if you've got that error, that means you should use sudo apt install Python 3.10. Press on Y and then enter. And that should have installed Python in your Linux. Let's now install PyCharm also from the terminal. So please open a new terminal window or tab. And here you want to do sudo snap. So we will use the snap package manager to install PyCharm -community space --classic and press enter. Enter the password of your Linux account, and that command should download PyCharm and it will also install it. So it was installed in my computer, and that's how you install Python and PyCharm on Linux. In the next video I'll show you how to start a PyCharm project and create your first Python program in PyCharm. See you in the next video. Hey, welcome back. In this video, I'll show you how to create a Hello World Python program in PyCharm. And then in the next video, we'll start building our to-do list app. But let's make sure that you can set up things correctly to create Python programs. That's the purpose of this video. So I assumed you installed Python and PyCharm. If you installed another IDE, that's fine also. Python code works the same in all IDEs. But I'll be using PyCharm. So this is the first window that PyCharm shows after you install it. If you don't see this window, that's all fine. Don't worry, I'll tell you what to do. So we'll create a new project using this button. If you don't see this video, there will be a file menu on the menu bar. So you can go to file and then new project or just new, whatever you see there. And that will take us both to this window. This can also be slightly different. In your case, it depends on the PyCharm version. So in this window is where we create a new project, a PyCharm project. A project is basically a folder where we'll put all our Python files. Python files are where we write the code. You'll see what they are in just a minute. So here we have a name field, and whatever you type in here will be added as a new empty folder inside this path, right? So you can leave it as it is, or you can go here and select a directory where this folder will be created. I'll just leave it as it is. Don't select any of these options, but make sure to select the project env option. And then go to this drop-down list. Now, this is important. This is where we select the Python interpreter version. So in the previous video, I installed Python 3.12, so I can see here Python 3.12. So I'm using that Python interpreter. This tool will execute my Python programs to get output. So you may have multiple versions here, which means multiple interpreters. I would recommend to select one which is 3.10 or newer, so 3.10, 3.11, 12 or 13. I'll select 3.12. And then finally you can press on create. Right, so now I can see my project directory in here. This is the path. If I go to the file system, I'll see the same thing. So under PC, users, rdit, PyCharm projects, PyCharm project 1. So these are the files or the folders which are inside this directory. So it's venv. It's also one folder named .idea. This folder is hidden by PyCharm. That's why you don't see it here. So it's not displayed here, but it's there. Now, let's create a Python program. We create Python programs inside .py files. So to create a Python program, you first want to right-click over the root directory here. So here, not above venv, but above Python project 1 in my case. And go to new, and then go to Python file. Then we want to give a name to this. So let's keep it simple and just say app. You can give a .py extension or just type in the name of the file because the extension will be added by PyCharm automatically. So I'll just press enter and that will create a new Python file in this directory. So inside Python project 1 in my case. Also, if I show you my folder, you'll see app. This file has been created here. One common mistake that people make, also I want to emphasize this, is that they create this app file inside the venv directory and then things go wrong. So if that's the case, you want to move that file back to the project directory. So I can do that from here. So just drag that and drop it in the root directory of your project. So I moved it back to that directory. So this is what you should see, right? Don't touch this venv directory. This venv directory contains a copy of the Python interpreter, and that interpreter will execute your code. So let's write some code. I said in the beginning we will write a hello world program. A hello world program is something which simply prints out hello world. So it displays a hello world text in the console. And for that, to display text with Python, we use this print function. We'll cover that later also. So for now, just follow me. The purpose of this video is just to show you how PyCharm works and how to create a Python file in PyCharm. So here you just write hello world inside the quotes and inside the parentheses. To execute this now, you either press that button or right-click and go here, Run App. This is the recommended way to do it, using right-click and go to Run App. And this should pop up, this console, also known as the terminal or the command line, and you should see the text Hello World. And that's a Python program. Now, one thing you should know is that in the course, I'll use the classic user interface of PyCharm. Most programmers prefer the classic user interface, so now I'll show you how to switch to the classic user interface. Even though you can use this new interface if you like, things will work the same. So to switch to the classic user interface, you want to go to the menu bar, go to File, go to Settings. On Mac, you can just press Command, comma to go to the settings, and then go to Plugins. Go to the Marketplace tab and then search for Classic UI and install that plugin. And you want to restart the IDE for the plugin to enable. And this is the classic user interface of PyCharm. So again, the project tree is here. It's the same thing basically. To run the program, you right click and go to Run App. And here we have the output. Let's close this project and create a new one just to wrap things up. So you can just close that, exit, and then if you open PyCharm again, that should open the same project that you worked on last time. So it's the same thing we're just seeing before. And we can create a new project by going to File, New Project. The process is the same, so we put a name for the directory where the project files will be stored. We select a Python version here, so it's the same basically, and press on Create. This will ask us if we want to close this current window or open a new parallel one. So if you want to keep this project open, you can press on New Window, otherwise you can press on this window, whatever you prefer. And here we go, we have another project. Again, you can right-click, go to New, Python file, let's give it another name, my app, and the process is the same. Always make sure that your file is in this root directory and not inside venv. That's the process. In the next video, we'll start building our to-do list app. See you there. Hi, I'm excited to start building our to-do list app in this video. So we will write the first line of code for our program. How do we start building a program? What's the logic behind building a program? This is the question I want to answer in every video, so you don't simply understand the syntax of the code, but also why we use something, when we use something, what we should use, and so on. The very first thing you should remember is that whenever you write a program, you should follow the input processing output workflow. In our example, we want to build this to-do list app. So what is the input? The input is getting a to-do from the user and then processing that. So perhaps we want to store that to-do in some text file. And then the output would be that we want to display the list of to-dos to the user in the console. So let's start from the input. Let's get from the user a to-do. So to do that, we want to display the user a message first. So let's display a message to the user. I'll create a new project because this was from the last video, just for testing things out with PyCharm. So I'll go to the File menu, New Project. I'll name this to-do app. Try to avoid spaces. And I would suggest to also use underscores instead of dashes. So project env 3.12 and press on create this window to override that window. And then right click on top, go to new Python file. I'll name this main.py or just main because PyCharm will add the extension for us. Main is a common practice to name the main file, which usually it's one single file, but sometimes you may want to add more files. And this will be the main file, which contains the main code. You'll learn more as we progress. So main.py was created. Make sure that it's not inside venv, otherwise things will not work. So venv is a separate directory here, and main is inside to-do app. You can also check that by going to Open in Finder or File Explorer to see if main.py is inside to-do app directly. So we can use a print function. A print function, as I mentioned in the previous video, is used to display a message to the user in the console. It's a function. Functions get some input. In this case, it's some text, such as enter to do, a colon, and that's it. So now let's run the program to see the output. So the best way to do that is by right-clicking somewhere in here and go to run, followed by the name of the file. And this is the output, enter to do. Now, the user cannot type text here because this view is read-only. But we will add something in the next video which allows the user to enter something, and then we're ready to process that user input. For now, we simply wanted to display a message. So this is how you build a program step by step. First, think of making a simple version of the program, and later you can add features. So for now, we just want to get to-dos from the user. Later, we will let the user edit to-dos, delete, etc. So for that, we're done with this video. You don't have to save files with PyCharm. Files are automatically saved as you type. So you can just close PyCharm, and when you open it again, this project will show up. Otherwise, you can go to File, Open, and then navigate to the to-do app directory to open that project again. That's for now. Thanks for following. See you in the next video. Previously, we wrote a program which shows this query to the user, this text. The problem here is that the user cannot interact with our program, so this area here is not typable. The user cannot enter any text, and therefore you cannot process user input just yet. But in this video you learn how to get user input, process it, and return processed output to the user. So that will open you to a wide range of possibilities what you can do with Python. So let's start. To get user input, you use the input function. You see, this syntax is similar to this syntax here, but I'll explain more about the syntax in this video in about 3 minutes. So let's focus on the user for now, on the program output. If I execute this program now, at first glance it looks the same, but first of all, we don't see that text here which says that the program execution finished or something like that. So the program is in an on-demand mode now. It is waiting for the user to enter some input. So as a user you can click here and enter some input, for example a to-do. So you get the string enter to-do, you enter the to-do, and you press enter to submit that text to the program. And there we have this process finished with the exit code 0. But what happened to this user texts? Well, nothing happened because we didn't process that. So we just asked the user to enter some input, and that's all. So if you want to process something, first you want to save that something in a variable. So that's why we want to save whatever text user enters, we want to save it in a variable, such as user underscore text is equal to that. So now this variable is just like a box where you put in different values, different content. In this case, this box will contain the user text clean the bag. And then we can print out that box, user underscore text. So let's execute this now and see the behavior. Enter to do, throw the trash, enter, and we get throw the trash printed out. So here is what happened. The program starts to execute the script line by line, starting from top and going down to the bottom. So it prints out enter a to do, this is the output of that, and then it waits for input. In the second line, the user enters some input. The input is stored in user text variable, and then you print out that input in the last line. Right, so let's talk about syntax now. What are all these parentheses and quotes? Well, print and input are functions. You see the similarity in syntax. So print has this open parentheses and this are the closing parentheses. But you can also have print without anything inside, just like we have input. So if I run the code now, you'll see nothing here because print didn't print out anything. However, input is asking for input, so here we can enter some input. Clean the bag, press enter, and user text, actually clean the bag, will be printed out the content of the user text variable. This part here is known as the argument of the print function in this case. So functions can have 0 or more arguments. The input function, by the way, can also get an argument. So if you delete that text from there and you put it in the input function, enter a to do, and you can also remove print because we don't need it now. So just execute the code as it is, and we get enter a to do. So what happens is that the input function is designed to print out its argument on the command line, but also is able to get the input from the user and return that user input. So functions can return a value, and in this case this function will return the user string. So clean the bag. That's the user string or text. Why am I saying string? Well, because text in Python is known as string. So it's a string type. You see, we have functions and we have strings and we have variables. So everything has its own syntax. And whenever something has quotes, it is a string. So it's text that you write, and you can write wherever you want. But these pieces of texts which don't have quotes are keywords. So you have to write them as you see them. However, the exception here is the variable. It doesn't have quotes, but still you can write wherever you like. So you can add a number after user, user1 text, and also here, and you're going to get the same output. You can also have underscore as I did here, or you can just have a simple variable like that, text. You cannot have numbers in the beginning of the variable though, that is not allowed. So you'll get an error if you do that. And before I close this lecture, I wanted you to know that it is also possible to store this string in a variable. Let's create a variable called message or prompt, however you like to call that variable, and this would be equal to this string. So cut that out, paste it in here, and then here you write the prompt variable, and things will work exactly the same. So the program is running now. I can stop it and rerun it. Enter the to do, meet Tom, and we get the same behavior. So meet Tom is printed out. Now you could ask, should we do the previous version or this version? Well, this is mostly a matter of preference. Both methods have their own pros and cons. For example, having this variable here adds some code to your program. So now you have 3 lines as opposed to having 2 lines of code. However, having variables like this tends to improve the structure of the program, especially when you name your variables with meaningful names. So prompt, or you could do better and say user prompt and then rename that here, of course, user prompt. So now you know what this is. So it's some text that you are showing to the user. So as a programmer, when you read this code later on, you will understand what's going on, and also other programmers can also understand your code. So you should also be a good citizen and write code which is readable. So this tends to improve readability in your code. You see now input user prompt, and you know that you're showing a message, a prompt to the user. And there's also another advantage which you'll understand later on when you learn how to debug your programs. So having intermediate variables like this. So by intermediate variables, I mean variables which you don't need to write, but you can write as we did here. So having intermediate variables makes it easier to debug your code for errors, because you are doing things step by step. So when you use a debugger, the debugger will like to have more lines of code, so it goes step by step and troubleshoots the issues. So that's the state of our program. Right now it gets input and it returns the same input that it got. Now what's next? Well, I'll tell you that in the next video, so I'll see you there. Currently our program asks the user for input, so the user enters a to-do and the program prints out the to-do. But that's not what we want. What we want is to let the user enter multiple to-dos in the command line. So how can we do that? Well, one way to do that is, of course, to have multiple input functions. So let's try to do that. Let's say text1, or better, let's name this to do1, right, is equal to that. And then to do2 is equal to input again, user prompt, and let's ask for another to do 3 is equal to input user prompt. And then what do we print out in here? Well, first let me remove this and execute the program as it is and see what will happen. So we get this message, enter a to-do, we enter clean the bag, meet Tom, throw the trash. So we were asked 3 times to enter to-dos, and each of these strings were stored in its corresponding variable. So now what do we do with these values? Well, we need a type in Python which allows us to store multiple items. So far you saw this type, a string, which is designed for text. And then we have another data type whose syntax is this one in here. So strings start with double quotes and they end with double quotes. And this thing here, which is called a list, a Python list, starts with opening square brackets and it ends with closing square brackets. And inside here, you can enter the items. So to do 1, to do 2, to do 3. And then print out to-dos. Run, meet sen, throw trash, clean the bag. And then we get printed out the lists that we assigned in this variable. So to-dos is another variable. We have one variable here, 2, 3, 4, 5 variables in our code. Each variable is associated with its own value. A string here, this variable is associated with the output of the input function, which is again a string. And this variable is associated with a list. Now let me explain what I'm talking about when I say types. So I'm going to print out here, down here, the type of user prompt and execute the script. So enter a to-do, let's keep it short, clean, meet, throw, and this is the list. So this is printed out by this print function, and then we have another output here, class str. So that output is the result of this line. So the type of this value is str, it's a string. If you check the type of to-dos, so here you point the variable and you get the type of the value that the variable is associated with. So to-dos points to a list, therefore we're going to get a list this time. Throw clean mid, and you see it's a list this time. So to-dos is a list. And lastly, let's check to-do1. To-do1, what is it? So to-do1 would be this text here that I enter. Throw. This would be to-do2, clean, and meet. So str for to-do1. So both this and the output of the input function are strings. So when the user enters some text here, that text is converted into a string type by the input function. So the input function gets that text, those characters from the command line, and it produces a string in Python. So we don't see that string in the Python script here, because you are not explicitly writing that strings as we do here. That string is implicitly created, and we only see that when we print it out somewhere in the command line. And so type here is a function. You see the syntax type, and it has these round parentheses, and inside we put an argument. So the argument can be anything. So in this case, it's the variable holding that string. The type function is designed to output. So every function outputs something. So this type function is designed to output the type of its argument, which was a string in this case. So to wrap it up in this video, what we did is we created multiple input functions and we stored each of the outputs in a Python list. So a list is needed to store multiple objects. So if you want, you can also add a literal string here and not only variables. So this is a string coming from that variable, but you can also say just hello here and you run it. Clean, throw, meet, and you see hello is also part of that list. Now, of course, the question is this sustainable? So having to write multiple functions for every to-do? Well, the answer is of course not. This is not sustainable. We don't know how many to-dos the user wants to enter. So we need to automate this process. We need to let the user decide how many to-dos they want to enter. And we don't want to write here 200 input functions. So of course there is a way to avoid that, and I'll talk to you about that in the next video. So thanks a lot and keep on learning. See you. Hi, welcome to the first video on code experiments. These kinds of videos aim to make you understand how the Python programming language works by trying to experiment with the code you have written so far. So in other words, I'll ask you to change certain elements in your code and observe how the output changes. This way you are able to see the code from different perspectives and not only from one single perspective, as covered in the previous videos of today. So let's start and you'll see how this code experiments videos work. So first experiment. So I need you to follow me. Please remove the second quote in the user prompt variable declaration and run the code. So I'd like you to do the same thing that I'm suggesting. So if you run the code, you will get this output. This is an error that the Python interpreter is generating. So the Python interpreter, which is the software that we installed, is trying to make sense of this script, but it cannot. Therefore, it produces an error. Now, let's read the error. First line is this one in here. That's just the Python interpreter executing our script. So that's the path to the Python interpreter in my computer, and that's the path to main.py file where the script is located. So PyCharm automatically executes this command in your computer, so that's nothing to worry about. But then we have this file, main.py. So this is the file where the error has occurred, and we get this line 1. That's the line where the error occurred. So if you want to click there, it will take you directly to that line, line 1. You also get the line which has the error in here, and it gives you some clue where the error is, more or less, but you have to use your own logic. What happened to the code? What's the problem with the code? So Python cannot fix the issue for you. The interpreter cannot fix the issue. You as a programmer have to understand what the issue is and then change the code. And lastly, we have the type of the error. There are different types of errors which we will encounter as we move on through the course, but this one is a syntax error. So the interpreter says unterminated string literal. So this gives you some clue. The Python interpreter found out that you were about to declare a string since you started to type in quotes. But then the interpreter went up to here and it found out that the string was not terminated. So you need a quote to terminate that. Right, experiment number 2. Change the double quotes to single quotes. So single quote there, single quote in there too. Run the code. To do, clean, and so on. So the code is working fine. So what's the point of this experiment? Well, the point here is that single quotes work as good as double quotes. So some people tend to use double quotes, some other people tend to use single quotes, but if you had here words such as don't, which has this single quote inside, then you have to use double quotes around the string because things will get mixed up. So the interpreter, the Python interpreter, will get confused since you had a single quote here, but then you close the quote in there and Python thinks that, oh, that's the string, and then this other part is confusing. So normally there's a rule of thumb that for long strings you should use double quotes. Like this. If it's just a short string such as hello, then it's fine to use single quotes. Next experiment. Try to remove one of these parentheses and run the code, and you'll see that you'll get an error. So again, it's a syntax error. It says this parenthesis was never closed. So now you know that you missed the parenthesis here, and then you write it again. You also see that we have these red underlines here. This is from PyCharm. The IDE also does some checking of the script before you execute the script. So you know now that even if you execute the script, you'll get some errors. So if you go in here and you hover your cursor in this underline, PyCharm will say that this closing parenthesis is expected, so that you don't have to run the code. You know that from PyCharm. Next experiment. Try to remove the space between this assignment operator and run the code, and you'll see that the code will work just fine. So I'll close this. So my point with this experiment is to show you that white space doesn't matter in Python. So whether it is with spaces around the assignment operator or not, it doesn't matter for the Python interpreter. However, it is recommended to have space around the assignment operator because it makes the code more readable. So for you as a programmer, it's better to have that space around that. And also PyCharm will suggest me to actually reformat the file. So if I press here, it will automatically add spaces around the assignment operator. And the last experiment I would like you to do is to just put this line here on top and make a space and run the program. You will get an error. So my point with this experiment is to show you that expressions have to be written one in each line. So if you have a variable declaration here, you write it in one line, and that's it. And then another declaration here, you write it in another line. Maybe you do some processing, some formulas, you write the formula in one line. So with that, I'll finish this video and thank you for following. I'll see you later. Hi, welcome to the first video on bonus examples. In bonus example videos, we will write simple, small Python programs. The purpose here is to revise the items you learned throughout the previous videos while building our app, our main app. So this is a way to use the Python elements from a different perspectives so that you understand the concepts better. For this first video for today, we will be building a program which checks the title of a book and gives us the length of that title. So let's imagine that you want to write a book. You have contacted a publisher and they tell you that your title shouldn't be more than 100 characters. So you want a tool that tells you the number of characters for your title. So you are testing out different titles and you want to see quickly. So the program will work like this. There's a prompt here, enter title, and you should enter a title here, such as comparing the different cherry drying methods. Press enter and you get this title length is 46. That's the output of the program. So I'm not showing you the code, but we will build it now step by step. So let's create a new Python file, bonus1.py. So again, think about the user. We want to show a message to the user, so let's create a variable which is equal to input, enter a title, maybe a colon, maybe a space here, so that's the text. You can also use double quotes, both will work. So whatever the user enters in the command line, that string will be stored in text in the text variable. And then how do we check the length of a string? The length is the number of characters of a string. So how many characters does this text have? You can check the number of characters for a string using the len function. So let's say length is a variable that is equal to the len function. The len function gets as input, as argument, the string which it should check for the length. So that will store the number of characters in length. Print length, and this should work. So enter a title, cherry drawing, press enter, you get 13. If you want to add some extra information here to make the output more user-friendly, what you can do is add another argument to print. So another object, the length of the title maybe a colon, and run again, right click and go to run bonus 1, enter a title, cherry drawing. The length of the title is 13, so 13 characters in cherry drawing. So that's about this example. So I introduced you to a new function, the len function. So len, input, print are all functions. Each of them gets some input, like here. The print function can get multiple inputs, and so each of them produces some output. So the output of the len function was a number. We will cover numbers later on, and that number was stored in this variable. So with that, thank you for following this, and I'll see you later. In this video you will learn how to use the Python console. That is a tool which will make your programming easier. So what is the Python console? Where can you access it? If you are on PyCharm, it's very easy to access the console. You can just go to this tab, press it, and this will open the Python console. You know the console is working when you see these 3 arrows. If you don't have this Python console, because you're in another IDE, there's another way to open the Python console. Your IDE probably has a terminal tool. So you can open the terminal, and then here you can write one of these commands. Either Python, you can also try py-3, press enter to see if it works, or Python 3.10 or Python 3.11. So one of these will work. In my case, Python works well, so I see these 3 arrows in here. But on PyCharm, I can just use the embedded Python console in here, which is the same thing as the one you get from the terminal. So what is the Python console? Well, in the console here, you can write Python code just like you do in a .py file. So for example, you can declare variables, you can do whatever you want. Prompt is equal to enter a to-do, press enter, and then you can continue coding and you get the output immediately. So enter a to-do is the string that we stored in user prompt, and we got that printed out. But if you close the console and then you open it again and then you try to print out user prompt, you'll get an error because you lost the code that you wrote previously. So the Python console is only used for throwaway code. So quick code you want to just test out to see how things work. For example, let's say we were programming here. We defined a variable and then we are not sure if we want to use an input function or something else. So we quickly go to the console and try the input function here to see if that's the right thing we want to use. So you can just press enter and you get this prompt. Hey, it asks you to enter some input. So now we know that this is probably the function we're looking for. Or maybe you just want to check the type of this text enter to do. You press enter and you get the type. So you know that it is a string. So you don't have to write that code in your program file. So as you can see, the Python console has pros and cons. The pro is that you can quickly get output, and the con is that the code is lost once you close the Python console tab. Now, it's important to understand how exactly the console is working. So what happens when you run a normal .py file is that Python executes this line and then it executes that line, that one, and so on. So it executes all the lines in a split of a second. Now with the console, the things are different. You execute lines one by one. So you write that line first, press enter, Python executes that. You can also see here on the left that a variable has been registered in the session here. So the execution now is halting, is an on-demand interpreter. Basically, the interpreter is waiting for lines from the programmer to be executed. So in this session now, you have access to that variable and maybe other variables that you define and execute in here. So other is also a variable. You can also see the type here, str. So hello is a string, enter a to do is also a string. My list would be a list. You can see here list, and it has this 0, which means there are 0 items. If you want to call a previously executed item, you go here, put the cursor in here, and then press the upper arrow key on your keyboard, and that will call the previously executed expression. If you press the upper key again, it calls the expression before that, and so on. You go back again with down arrow key, up, down, until you find what you want. So my list could have more items such as hello, hi. So 2 strings. You see these are split with a comma. Press, and now my list has been updated. You see these are 2 items now. So that's about the Python console. Is a great way to help you with programming and also excellent for learning. So you can experiment very quickly using the Python console. And of course, when you want to write a program, you want to store the code in a Python file, because the file is stored on disk, so you don't lose the changes. With that, I thank you, and I'll talk to you later.